Hello there and welcome to the first episode of our latest Over Our Garden Wall music podcast series. In this series, our plan is to create a definitive list of the 100 greatest albums ever released, and a few friends plus some special guests have been tasked with coming up with that list. We will be using the latest Rolling Stone magazine 100 Greatest Album list as our starting point and carrying out Twitter poll votes on every album on the list to help us make our final decisions. At some point in the future, we will podcast and publish the definitive list, number 100 to number 1. Piece of cake. For the first episode, we will be reviewing the albums Rolling Stone rated number 100 to 96 on their list, and it's a pretty eclectic starting point. Helping us review these today are our friends, George, hi mate, Stephen, Lisa, and John. Evening everyone, how are we doing?
Hello.
Hi.
Good man.
Thanks for your time tonight, really appreciate it. And we're going to have some fun, for sure. So before we start discussing the first five that we need to vote on today, I thought it's maybe just worth asking what your sort of initial reaction or gut reaction was to the 100 albums that are on the current Rolling Stone list. I think you've all had a sort of quick look at them. What's your take on the list as a total?
I think it's very Americanized, personally. I think it's very America-centric. There's a few on there I've never heard of. There are some bangers in there, some great stuff. But there's some stuff that I will struggle to comment on because I simply haven't heard them. But I'm going to make an effort to do so over the coming weeks. And so it should improve.
Cool. And maybe your American accent will get better as well, mate.
Well, you don't want to hear that. You really don't want to hear that.
What's the other thoughts, guys? I think it is a bit American, and I suppose that makes sense, doesn't it, coming from Rolling Stone world? But yeah. I think there's something like 300 contributors to the poll, you know, so again, I'm sure those were American based, but a lot of them are kind of international musicians and stuff. So I think they had a go, at trying to make it as sort of international as possible, but it does feel a bit weighted. Do you think so?
I would say so, yeah. It's there's a lot of albums, especially towards the top 20, top 30, that are quite predictable, you know, the ones that you would expect to be in any sort of classic rock list. It's the ones near the bottom, I think, we're going to have most fun with.
Yeah.
The ones from maybe 50, 60 down to 100. I think we're going to have some real good laughs going through them.
Yeah. John, Lisa, what's your initial thoughts on it?
I just felt that there were quite a lot on the list that I haven't heard. There were a lot that I just assumed when I read down it would be there and they weren't. So I think I agree with George. It's that kind of middle area, that middle ground, where it's a lot of more recent music that maybe we aren't so, I don't know, not comfortable with, but just familiar with.
Yeah.
Not down with the kids, Lisa, is that where you're going?
What's that?
Not down with the kids, Lisa, is that where you're going?
Well, I like to think I am, actually, but maybe I'm going to be proved wrong.
Well, I know there's a comment somewhere in the Rolling Stone chat, because I think they've done this list 3 times now, I think, from memory. And there was a gap of about, I think it was about 12 years between the second time they did the list and the last time, which was in 2020. And I think it's a list of 500 if you've had a look at it. And I think from the 2 lists, there was 160 new artists that was in the 2020 500 that wasn't in the previous one. So obviously to make that happen, 120, 160 have to drop out, don't they? So I think you're right. I think, you know, musical taste does change, but there's maybe a bit of that sort of modern outlook on what's successful, what's, you know, what's sold well, particularly in North America. But there's also some amazing records on there. And I think, you know, you think we'll all genuinely be a wee bit challenged and maybe surprised by maybe some of the stuff we don't know so well that actually is really good. Which is half the fun, I think. John, what's your take, mate?
Yeah, there's a lot of, I guess, middle of the road stuff, you know, quite predictable, but also a number of genres and artists that I would, if it wasn't for this, I wouldn't listen to them in the first place. 2 or 3 of which are on discussion tonight.
Okay, that's a good starting point then.
And I've got some, let's say, differing opinions now that I've listened to a couple of those artists, which I'm sure we'll come on to. But yeah, I think it is quite Americanized and quite, you know, safe in many ways. But then I suppose you find that
these are supposedly top albums of all time, so you're never going to get something that is, I guess, particularly niche or underground in there, unless it's the Velvets.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I think what you'll find is obviously the majority of them have had some sort of commercial success, or maybe, not enough people would have heard them to vote on them in the first place. However, I think a lot of those ones are maybe more slow burn successes that, have created like legacy and stuff, or maybe created new genres, or they're not all sort of million sellers in the year they came out. So the two don't have to be disassociated. For example, there's no ABBA on there. And if there'd been an ABBA at the moment, mate, yeah, and if there'd been an ABBA on there, I'd have nodded and said, that's ticking past for me. But obviously that, whoever was looking at it didn't consider ABBA to be, in that world. But I think other people like us might take a different view. So some that are massively successful aren't on there. Madonna's not on there, I don't think, from memory. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out as we kind of go through the list in totality. But you're right, it's a bit American.
I think with ABBA, they were probably a great singles band, but if you do listen to some of their albums, they're bang average.
Yeah,
in my
there's
opinion.
a few fillers in there. Yeah, a few fillers. But hopefully we don't have too many ABBA albums to put forward, John. Or we're in trouble a bit. The other thing I asked you to do was just have that sort of quick number guess on from that original list, the number that you thought might make a pass at staying in the 100. It was actually quite interesting. John, I didn't get your final number, mate, but for the rest of the guys, I think the lowest was 51 at McD. And George, you were somewhere between 50 and 75, depending on your categorization of what.
Yeah, I just went. I was starting to feel a bit unwell at that point, so I was starting to lose it. So I was either going, absolutely, or get that to fuck off my radio.
I might read some of the comments out on one of the podcasts that you have given, because they're quite interesting as well. So, and the other thing I mentioned, it's a kind of Over a Garden Wall podcast, but only because that's the kind of podcast series that we're picking up. But we want a name for this. This is a different discussion. And as you know, we've just been saying like greatest album review on Twitter, but we do want to come up with a name on it. So I know
the guy over the wall isn't even here.
Sorry.
The guy over the wall isn't even here.
There you are.
Over the wall.
Touche. So we've got a few ideas already, which I think, George, you must have been on a bit of a roll when you were knocking these out. So for the listeners, the short list at the moment for the podcast name is Hit or Shit, Belter or Melter, Win or Bin, Gold or Mold, and Jukebox or Charity Box. So I don't know if we can better that, or maybe.
I'm sure we can. That was just a couple of.
Yeah, I didn't realise that was all about.
Yeah, I think that was us just getting the chat going. So
no,
maybe
I think we can do better than that.
That's one to go back to, I think. And again, I'll maybe over time, maybe ask some feedback on Twitter as well, and see how rude we can get people on there without getting them banned.
I thought that was just the advice for the dummy here. You have to think, is it win or bin? And that's all you have to do.
Yeah. No, not at all.
Jukebox
jury. So that's us. So that's the background. That's the kind of, I guess that's the idea. We've got 5 to have a chat through tonight. As I say to you, the idea is to keep it fairly snappy, and I'm sure we'll all have a view, and we can hopefully give them thumbs up or down and move on to the next one. So the first one on the Rolling Stone 100 list was music from The Big Pink by the band, which was released in July 1968, and it was number 100 on the list. So the commentary from the Rolling Stone list was as follows. Big Pink was a pink house in Woodstock, New York, where the band, Bob Dylan's 65-66 backup band on tour, moved to be near Dylan after his motorcycle accident. While he recuperated, the band backed him on the demos, later known as the Basement Tapes, and made their own debut. Dylan offered to play on the album. The band said no thanks. We didn't want to just ride his shirt tail, drummer Leaving Helm said. Dylan contributed I Shall Be Released and co-wrote 2 other tunes. But it was the rustic beauty of the band's music and the incisive drama of their own reflections on family and obligations, such as The Wait, that made Big Pink an instant homespun classic. So that's their sort of summary justification for it being on there. So over to you guys. What do you think?
I'll go first with this one. I'm a massive band fan. I love the band. I saw them not in concert, obviously. I was too young. They broke up on Thanksgiving night, 1976, in the original form. Scorsese made a movie about their final gig called The Last Waltz, which for me is like one of the greatest rock concert movies. But they were a bunch of Canadians, basically, one American, and the rest of them were a bunch of Canadians. And they seem to have that American country rock thing. They distilled something that was absolutely perfect and absolutely of its time, just post Dylan, post Beatles in their heyday, and before you got too melodic with the Eagles and all that shit that came afterwards. They were just right at the right time. And I was very lucky. A friend of mine took me to Woodstock just 8-9 years ago. He took me just not long after Levon died, and he took me to Levon's house, and he called them up and said, look, my friend's coming over, any chance he can come in and, have a look around? Because he used to do these sessions in his barn. And they said, yeah, sure, come on in. So they allowed me to go into his barn and play his drum kit and have a look at his Grammys and stuff like that. It was phenomenal. It's great. But they're just one of those bands for me that are, they're right up there. They're not household names, but everybody knows the weight. And there's about 4 or 5 tunes on that album that are just excellent as far as I'm concerned. So as far as, for me, the band stay.
Okay, great starting point. So we'll get one in. Who's next?
Well, I don't have all that knowledge that George has, but I absolutely loved it. I'm pretty sure my mum had it. And I definitely, in my sort of unconscious, have heard it before, even though I don't actually own it myself. And I just instantly loved it, and I could listen to it over and over again. It actually brought back kind of memories of my mother in her with her very long hair that she used to iron with brown paper and the iron, because we didn't have curling tongs, and her little matching top and hot pants, and dancing around. And I can just see her dancing to this album. That's just it's a very personal thing. My favourites are obviously The Weight, Chest Fever, absolutely fabulous. In fact, George, I was going to ask for that in your show. Is that okay?
Absolutely. I'll gladly play the band.
Only if there's no swearing, Lisa.
There's no swearing in the band. No swearing at all.
You wouldn't allow it.
No, it's only me that swears. My voice, but
so I think for different reasons, you're sounding quite positive, I guess, Lisa, as well.
I think that they do incorporate everything. There's folk in there, rock, gospel. It's pure Americana. Although, as George said, the only 4 of them are 4 of them are Canadian, 1 American, and of course, from the outset, although they said they didn't want Dylan in it, Dylan is there.
Yeah. His influence pervades
that, but they have made it their own, definitely. For me, that's a definite.
Okay, lovely. John?
Yeah, mixed bag for me. I think, as Lisa said, there's a lot of styles going on there. Some soul, bit honky tonk country. There's a couple of songs I particularly liked. Caledonia Mission, thought was fantastic, and I Shall Be Released, which actually Dylan wrote. So Dylan, I think, was involved in writing 3 of the songs on it, and did the cover art for it as well, which I thought was quite interesting. I just found it quite non-offensive, and I think the first song, Tears of Rage, I thought quite well constructed. For some reason it reminds me a bit of A Whiter Shade of Pale in part, as it was going through, but I just felt, when's the song going to end? I just thought the track itself was quite boring. But I thought quite an interesting band, the Dylan aspect, looking into them as well, they were involved in, I think, writing scores for quite a few Scorsese films, King of Comedy, Casino, Raging Bull, Colour of Money, stuff like that. So then, of course, there's The Wait, which, like a juvenile school kid, still makes me laugh when I listen to it.
Take a load off Fanny.
Exactly, yeah. So, so I don't, and it also started out as a rockabilly band, which I personally wish they'd stuck to that. Called the
Ronnie
Hawks.
Hawkins' influence.
The Hawkins,
Yeah, the Hawks. They were Ronnie Hawkins. So, so that's quite interesting. Would I keep them in? For me, no. I just thought it was quite middle of the road, I would say. But there are a couple of really good standout tracks that I'm glad I've picked up on.
So on balance, that's a no, yeah?
Correct.
Okay, cheers, mate. Stephen?
Hey, I've only heard it twice in both of them in the last week. There's a few facts about it that have really surprised me. It sounds amazing. My initial reaction was a big definite no, but no, I've had a second listen to it and read the backstory and what have you. It's quite a piece of work. I didn't realise it'd been recorded in under a fortnight, the whole thing. And but as I said, Dylan wrote one and co-wrote two. The other thing that caught my eye was that Eric Clapton heard this album and he described it. Yeah, that's why he chucked Cream.
I was actually going to say that. Yeah,
that's good. That's good news, isn't it?
Yeah, that's where I was going.
Yeah, that's good news.
But it's incredible the influence it had on some of the real sort of pioneer guys. I mean, I could go on and go on, but I'm not going to. But they seemed to be a seminal band that I wasn't aware of. Well, I was aware of them, but didn't have any in-depth knowledge of until the last few weeks. So, as far as I'm concerned, this isn't just going to be about a podcast and doing reviews and what have you. This is about education.
Yeah,
very much so. Yeah.
So bring it on. In my opinion, I put this down as a no initially on my various Excel sheets I've sent back to you. There's a few of them, but I think I'm swaying now towards a yes.
Okay.
On second listen and knowing what was going on. I was far too young as well. So, but I'd probably say yeah.
Okay.
There's something about, before we go on, there's something about the band itself. That the second album they had, the eponymous album, The Band, is another belter of an album, and it came not long after. It came probably less than a year after Music from the Big Pink, and that's definitely worth listening to. But also they had 3 lead singers. That's something about them that I found I'm always drawn to. The 3 different lead singers, Levon Helm, Rick Danko and Richard Manuel. All 3 of them have got very, very distinct voices, and all 3 of them sing lead at different times during the wait. So it's one of those ones. It's not just one singer. And people think Robbie Robertson was the singer. It was those other 3 guys who basically carried it. They were remarkable.
Yeah, I liked Richard Manuel singing. His
beautiful
voice
singer.
was pretty decent. Out of the 3, he's my favourite.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, John. I think there's something really soulful in his voice, especially with that kind of that keyboard melodic feel to what he does. I mean, I've always liked the band, but it would never be sort of top of my list of any favourite bands and stuff like that. But I think it's a great album. I think, especially as a debut album, and it's came off the back of the whole Basement Tapes, and I guess nobody really knew that at the time because none of that came out until a later date. So this was pretty new to the market, and you can imagine the impact it had at the time, as well as somewhere down the line. One of the quotes I picked up was, I think it was Roger Waters said it was the second most influential rock album ever. Whether you agree with that or not is a moot point, but I think that's the kind of impact it had at the time across their kind of peer group, and for that reason, I guess if no other, as well as the fact it's sold well, and George referenced The Last Waltz and stuff, which all became a bit iconic down the line. I think there's a fair bit to their backstory that probably merits maybe inclusion on the list. Okay, so I said we wouldn't kick the arse out of it. So I think that from memory it is George, Lisa, Stephen, I think, and probably myself was a yes, and John, you on the no side. So even my
So I'm away the huff.
Sorry,
Right,
even my pretty basic ex-bookie maths, I think that's a tick and pass. So so for the moment, we'll put that one in the list. I think the Twitter guys were 57% yes as well when we did a little poll there. So I suppose that's maybe rubber stamping that a little bit. So cool. So we're one stays in. That was pretty easy. Okay. Second one is number 99, which is Taylor Swift Red, which was released in 2012. So the notes are: Taylor Swift shocked the world with her fourth album, breaking away from country music to make a record that recalled classics by the Beatles and Prince in the way it pulled from across the pop and rock landscape and transformed every sound it touched. The lead single, We Are Never Ever Getting Back Together, was stomping, swaying electric twang. I Knew You Were Trouble rode a dubstep groove, and the title track with a swirl of banjos, dusty guitars and top box elation. Tabloid types tied themselves in knots trying to figure out which song was about which ex, but the real news was Swift's songwriting on high points like the astonishing All Too Well, as vivid a post-breakup remembrance as any artist has ever produced. So what do we think of Taylor Swift Red?
Yeah, I'll start. First up,
long silence there.
well, there was. I think everybody's a state of shock about this one. I expected to hate this. I really did. That's my gut reaction, instinctive reaction. But I'm ashamed to say I quite liked it. I wouldn't be rushing out to buy it, but I was incredibly surprised by the way she could swing from one genre to the next and carry it off. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's a few turkeys on this. There really are, but there's some crackers. That first song Brian's talking about, All Too Well. First thing that hit me was how deep her voice can go. Great range, and great intro. It rocks in. It's brilliant, and it's obviously a retrospective. It sounds to me like a cracking Brian Adams song. You know, wouldn't be surprised he was involved in making it. But I really liked it.
Well, she has got quite a few collaborators, sort of directly and
I wouldn't be
indirectly
surprised if he was
involved.
behind it.
So,
You close your eyes, it could have been Brian Adams.
yeah. I think there is a lot of tracks on it. I think I think the original album was 16 tracks. It was a double album, which in itself, I guess, is pretty brave for a kind of pop artist to be doing that.
Yeah, there is 16.
Yeah. Yeah, so kind of pleasantly surprised enough to warrant going in, or are you still a bit ambivalent about it? Or
I mean, I think it was a bit of an eye-opener for me and a bit of an education for me. And that somebody said to me, Taylor Swift, I'd instantly reject it without even hearing it, which is not a wise thing to do, I'd imagine. But I'd recommend, I don't know, top 100 ever? No chance. Okay. But it is surprisingly, what I would say is, right, I work in schools, right, and last Friday, at lunchtime on a Friday, they get the tunes on in the social area. There's 900 kids in there, and they put on Taylor Swift at full blast, and the place went nuts. Seriously, it bounced down all over the place at lunchtime, and so she's got a massive appeal to the. Well,
this album's about 12 years old. I think it's 12 years old now, isn't it?
Yeah, and they all knew it.
10 years.
8 years, John. 10 years. Sorry, mate. 7 hit singles, right. 4 in the top 10. 13 countries, #1. 8 million copies sold in America. 7 weeks the Billboard. Second artist ever to have 3 albums at #1 for 6 weeks or more after the Beatles.
Huge success, but I mean, huge success. Album sales doesn't equate to. It shouldn't be in the top 100.
No, it was. It was also #1 in Scotland, I might add.
But it wasn't me.
Okay. I say that what you're talking about, the school thing there. So, obviously I've been going about my daily stuff, listening to all the albums, and I think every single one of my kids has come in and said, "Mum, you're listening to Taylor Swift. Why? Why are you listening to Taylor Swift?" Because they obviously quite like her. I don't think. I think they just know the hits, but they were at the right age for that. That sort of teenage thing. They're all a bit younger, but I I have to say that, you know, and Brian knows this, that I was a bit kind of, oh, good luck with the Taylor Swift thing. I'm not sure. But I was also pleasantly surprised.
Okay.
And I actually think I've actually become quite fond of it as an album. But I don't know whether that's because I admire her and the fact that you know, she was doing all the country thing, and then this is what made her big, the movement into pop and the breakup album, I suppose. But there was a lot about it I liked. I mean, she was really young and I think quite talented songwriter.
Yeah,
And
I
even
think there's a couple of comments about, you know, her being the sort of white Beyonce type, you know, that
Right.
girl power, you know, attitude, rewriting the rules, you know, woman in a man's world type thing. I think there's quite a lot of that sort of story behind her, as well as the kind of success that she had with her
Yeah, well,
songs.
listening to it over and over, I think it's there's something quite sweet about it that drew me to it, and there was clever things about it. The fact that the whole album is just is basically a pattern of, you know, well, I think it is a breakup, and then there's the hope at the end. You know, she goes through the kind of she talks about the clean slate at the beginning, and it's all exciting, and then of course there's the descent, then there's the disappointment and the anger and the contempt, and you know, some of her lyrics are quite funny about it. There's also the repetition. It's all about patterns and metaphor, and you know, with what's this, the song I'm talking about, I Almost Do. I think that's such a lovely song. It really touched me, this sort of I almost do. You know, everybody knows that struggle to, you're not going to go back there, but you nearly do. And then she finishes it with Begin Again, and it's not I almost do, but it's I do. You know, it's more affirmative, and you know, she's going to meet someone else, she's going to move on. I don't know, I thought that was quite clever, and I really took to that side of it. Whether I think it should be top 100, not so sure.
Okay. George.
Yeah, again, like everybody else so far, I think I was pleasantly surprised by it. And MD that plays the ukulele gets a tick in my box as well. I really like the first track, State of Grace, kind of poppy rock song. I think, reading about her as well, really admire her. I think she's a strong female philanthropist, ambassador, songwriter as well. You know, a lot of artists out there don't write their own stuff, but get all the plaudits. She's writing songs. Some interesting collaborations: Gary Lightbody, Ed Sheeran. Not all fantastic, I have to say, but no, I really liked it. She's a bit of a music chameleon, isn't she? You know, and particularly on that record, just showing that she can move into different genres and express her art, really. So liked it. Was it top 100? Not for me. I think with all these types of lists, I think, as you said at the start, if they do another list in 10 years' time, I'd be very surprised if this is in it then. So I have a completely different take on him now, but I don't think it's one that I would advocate to stay in the list.
I guess my observation on that, John, might be that she was aspiring to be like a modern version of Carole King, Carly Simon, maybe Joni Mitchell to a point. So I guess that's quite a high bar to set yourself, and whether she managed to jump that bar, I guess, is a bit of a debatable point. But as you say, there's a kind of touch of class in what she does that is maybe
definitely
yeah.
She's not sticking to the tried and tested that's seen her do well in the past. She's trying to reinvent and move into different areas, and I think for some artists that's great. For some fans, actually, they hate that because they want them just to stay as they are. But for me, artists have to evolve and move on, and she's definitely done that. So fair play.
Yeah, thanks for that, mate. George.
I'm going to be the lone dissenter here. as most of you guys know, I'm a pop fanatic. I love
Yeah,
pop music, and there's Taylor Swift songs that I do like. You know, there's that Shake It Up, Shake It Up.
Classic.
Really, that's a cracking tune.
Classic.
A lot of her tunes were co-written with a fella called Max Martin. Now, Max Martin's written about, I think he's written 25 American #1 records. And there's about 4 or 5 of them that I think are really good. You know, Baby Hit Me Baby One More Time, the Britney Spears one, and also wrote the one for Katy Perry, I Kissed a Girl, and I liked it.
Yeah.
I think that's another cracking pop tune. The Justin Timberlake one, Can't Stop This Feeling. Those kind of tunes I like of Max Martin, but those are very few and far between. Beg your pardon. But for me, it felt, and I respect her as an artist. She seems to have her head screwed on, and she's very popular. And it's not an album that's aimed at me generally, but I can get modern young pop music when it connects. This didn't connect for me. It felt very formulaic. Despite the lyrical themes, it just felt like an afternoon with my daughters in H&M, and it was like fucking awful. Honestly, it was like 14 or 16 tracks of sheer monotony. It was like, no, absolutely not. There's better stuff from her, and I think it came later on. So I think choosing, maybe that was the jump off point from the country into the pop world, but it didn't resonate with me at all, I'm afraid.
And not even the fact that she's half Scottish, George, that won't sway you.
No, that's not going to work with me. wet are Scottish.
Yeah, they're all Scottish. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, my Topman's Worth would be, I actually really liked it much more than I thought I would. I think if it'd been maybe a 12-track album with, 7 or 8 of those, which I thought were fantastic pop songs, I actually would be minded to argue it should go in. I do think 16 tracks is a lot of tracks to have as a sort of pop crossover type album.
I didn't feel there was even 7 or 8 great pop tracks on it, to be honest with you.
No.
It felt very, I can see what every song's going, and every tune, even as catchy as they were, it felt very predictable. I sort of knew the tropes, and I knew where the producer was going to take it, and I knew where she was going to take it. There was nothing surprising about it for me.
Okay. I'm feeling as if we're steering towards a thumbs down, are we? Without, do we need to get around the room? Happy to do that. Is there any thumbs up for the record?
Well, I'm going to go, I know, despite secretly quite liking it, but I don't think it qualifies for top 100.
Okay, cool. Anyone disagree with that?
No, I did warm to her, and I warmed to the record, but I don't think I'll be playing it now that we've done this, so it's a no from me.
You okay with that, John?
100%.
Okay, mate. I've got real respect for her now that I probably should have had and didn't. But I mean, she came off social media for a year through choice because she wanted to step away straight after this record, actually, and then she sued the DJ for harassment and a whole bunch of other stuff as well. That, to be honest, if I knew that, it's no, my Dee's a DJ, isn't it? So I had to check whether it was him or not. If I knew all that, I'd forgotten it. So as I say, I think there's a bit of there's a bit about her, to be fair. So I guess time will tell, won't it, if she keeps knocking out.
I think she'll be around for quite a while. I think.
Yeah, good shout.
She'll continue to be a success, especially if she keeps hiring, like pop award-winning composers like Max Martin. It's just no for me.
Yeah, it does help. You're dead right. Twitter went with us as well. I think it was 33% in favour for Taylor. So I think on that basis we'll put her to one side for the list, and I don't think she's got any more on there. So we'll move on. So number 98 was Lucinda Williams, Car Wheels on a Gravel Road, which is kind of Americana 1998 release. So the notes from Rolling Stone was, it took 3 torturous years to finish, but it was worth it. There are no bad songs on this alt country masterwork. The title track is one of Williams' best. Over guitars that owe more to the Stones than to the Opry, she tells a story about the rootlessness of American life. Williams, who was born in Louisiana, describes the South in a loving, fearful tone, and mourns pals who fell prey to hard liquor, drugs, or dreams of stardom. With production help from Roy Bittan of the E Street Band and a lot of twangy power chords, Williams rocks hard enough to give these troubled songs both dignity and a feeling of release. What do we think about Lucinda Williams' Car Wheels on a Gravel Road?
Well, first up, it's a great name for an album, in my opinion. Great name, so evocative, you know.
Yep.
As far as the album goes, I've had one listen to it. I'm not going to lie to you, and I liked it. I did like it, but I think there's an awful lot of stuff out there very similar. Since 1968, or no, sorry, 98. Again, top 100. That's what we're doing. Should be top 100. You know, top 500. Yeah, of course. Top 100. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think so at all.
Feels very American, and I'm actually a bit of a fan of Lucinda Williams, but this feels, pretty niche.
Yeah.
As a jumping off point.
That's one of the reasons when we first kicked off, I said I feel the whole list is listing towards the Americana side.
Sure.
It's not a bad thing, but it is a bit skewed, and just a bit, not too much, but it is a bit skewed. And I think this just falls over the line for me into a no.
Okay, mate. Thank you. Who's next?
So, for me, sorry.
No, fire in, Lisa, go for it.
Right, so I'm embarrassed to say that I did not know who Lucinda Williams was. I had never heard of her. I didn't realise, she was quite a well-known songwriter. So I was thinking, right, okay, I'll have a listen. And I just could not get into it at all. It's hard to explain because I've never been a big country fan, but I'm up for listening to anything. But I just felt, I knew that she had taken so long to write this album that I would have expected a bit more of a wow factor from it. And maybe that's just me. It just felt a bit kind of, I was drifting off when I was listening to it. I was going off and doing other things. It didn't make me want to put it on again and again. And I did listen to it quite a few times, but even with a few listens, just didn't really do anything for me.
Yeah, she's got this reputation as being a sort of perfectionist, and I know that Steve Earle did a lot of the heavy lifting on the original recording and production, and then he bailed because I think he had a tour or something to do.
I think there's a few big names in there that let's go to, but
yeah, absolutely. And then Roy Bittan from E Street came in and had to sort of carry it over the line. And there is a bit of that, being a big Springsteen country fan, I could see why I would love this record, but you can see also why, it maybe did struggle a little bit to get over the line because it's obviously been fairly difficult for her to make. I'm guessing with other people involved.
Perfectionism isn't everything, especially with music. It's what it does for your audience, or whatever. I don't know. Maybe she tried too hard for me. I don't know.
Maybe. George.
Yes. Well, there's this album was one of the few Americana albums to make the top 100, and one of the ones that didn't make it was an album called Raisin Sand by Alison Krauss and Robert Plant. Everything about Raisin Sand, it's one of the greatest albums of this century, easily. It's a fantastic album, Raisin Sand. It's everything that this album isn't. It's playful, it's got witty lyrics, it's got every song sounds a little bit different from the last. It's not too samey, whereas this felt like a mission to listen to and to get to the end of, because it was overwrought at times for me. And I think Steve Earle might have bailed before it was time to, come up with some decent songs, because I didn't feel that any of them were particularly memorable, even the ones that were reputedly her, standout songs. I was listening to them thinking, really, I'm not getting this. I can appreciate, how important she is in this sort of punky Americana genre, but if you really want to hear Americana, check out Raising Sand by Robert Plant and Alison Krauss. It's fucking sensational. Compared to this, it's night and day. So I'm afraid I would have to, I wouldn't go back to listen to that again, I'm afraid.
Okay, mate. Cheers for that. John?
I'm going to be different
That's
again.
that's all right,
I
man.
liked it.
You liked it?
I did. I liked it. I listened to it twice, and it was kind of quite late at night, and maybe that's sort of lying in my bed reading my book with that in the headphones, and I quite enjoyed it. Whether I would like it in any different setting, I don't know. It was interesting that Steve Earle was involved, and I don't think the relationship they had together during the recording process was particularly convivial. And then when he left, obviously Ray Bitton came in. I think the difficulty here is what do you benchmark it against? Because I'm not one that listens to a lot of country music. So obviously George has mentioned one there that would, in his view, stand up well beyond that. So personally, I would keep it in because I think I'd like to have different genres in the top 100 and genres that ordinarily I don't listen to or everybody else doesn't listen to. But the problem I have with it at the moment is I've got very little to benchmark it on.
Okay.
So I would keep it in at the moment, but that could well change, once we get a Robert Plant, Alison Krauss, or someone else from that type of music. Perhaps.
Or even, I don't know, guys like Wilco maybe start to come onto the scene.
Yeah, absolutely. And
yeah.
I'll take all of those guys ahead of the Alison Krauss.
Yeah.
There's something about them. They have that X factor for me that Lucinda Williams doesn't appear to have. So
the Twitter guys were very positive. I think almost 70% of the Twitter guys were up for this one, and some fairly nice kind of comments and stuff around it. I did know the album. I do like it. This probably benefits from being a bit shorter than the Taylor Swift record. So the second side, although I listen to it on Spotify, but the second half, if you want, is the kind of breakup half, and I like that stuff. The kind of downtrodden stuff, and I think it gets kind of quite dark towards the end, which I really like as well. So as John says, maybe it's a timing. When you listen to it and maybe where you listen to it. I'd be minded to leave it in, but a gun to my head to get it voted out wouldn't bother me too much either. I would like to keep some genres in that aren't just knocking out classic rock albums or what have you. But as George says, maybe there'll be other ones that can fill this one. So let's say sorry, John.
Just on the genres, we will get some psychobilly in there, won't we?
Well, we will. When you apply your veto, John, I'm sure we will, mate. Absolutely.
The Cramps are making the list by hook or by crook.
The Cramps are going on at least once. So is there anyone voting for this to stay on?
Me.
Yeah.
No.
Me too. So that's 2 on, I think, and 3 for no. Is that correct?
Yes.
Cool. Okay. Well, for the moment, that's back
Hold
on
on a minute, Brian. 3 and 2 is 5.
But D's not here, mate.
Correct. I'll give you that.
Thank you. Moving on swiftly. If he can't turn up, he doesn't get a vote. That's the rules, right? That's one of the rules.
Yeah, generally, I would think that's how it works, isn't it?
Just can't. Yeah, exactly, mate. Can't make up as you're going along. Okay, we'll have some fun with this one. We're doing okay for time, so hopefully not too long. Number 97 was Metallica, Master of Puppets, which was released in March 1986. Okay, the comments were, Metallica's third album has a lyrical theme of manipulation. It deals pretty much with drugs. Singer-guitarist James Hetfield said, instead of you controlling what you're taking and doing, it's drugs controlling you. It also has a sonic theme, really loud guitars, played fast with no regard for the hair metal that was then dominating the airwaves. When the band slows down on Welcome Home, it just emphasises the unrelenting nature of the rest of the songs. Recorded during 3 months in Copenhagen, Master of Puppets was bassist Cliff Burton's last album with Metallica. He died in September 1986 when the band's bus crashed on tour. So, what are we thinking of Metallica Master of Puppets? John, John, can I start with you, mate?
Yeah, you can. I struggled to listen to this. I felt like my ears were beginning to bleed, quite frankly. You know,
They would probably take that as a compliment, John.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
And James Hetfield is a bit of a CUNT as well, as far as I'm concerned. But that aside, and I'm slightly going back on what I was saying earlier about genres of music. It's just far too heavy and too raucous for me. It's not something I could consistently listen to. You know, even if something like that came on in a pub, I'd try to zone out and, you know, keep it away from my ears, really. I think in terms of heavy rock and heavy metal, I think there are probably far better exponents out there, like, say, perhaps AC/DC. But this is not something that I can listen to. So I'll keep it short and sweet. It's a no from me.
Thank you. Who's next?
Okay, I'll go. Yeah, I really did struggle with it. And I did listen to it for quite a few plays. Just for me, not musical, but I can see the attraction, and I know it's not AC/DC and all that, but this is thrash metal. You know, that are, you know, it's up there with what is it, Anthrax and other.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thrash
Yeah, Megadeth, Slayer.
Megadeth, that's what I was thinking of. Megadeth, right? So, okay, so it's maybe not our thing, but they have sold millions of records. They have
huge.
They've sold millions of records. And so there must be some sort of appeal there. I don't know, maybe to, you know, the theme seems to be, it's all death, doom, gloom, grief, wrath, everything. It's incredibly heavy, but I just don't know whether maybe it just appeals to a certain type of, maybe a younger person who just feels that they don't fit in, and the way to block everything out is to listen to that and be part of something. It's not, I read somewhere that it was melodic and, you know, I don't know, some sort of musical intricacy. I couldn't get that at all. I get the guy can play guitar, but my God, it went on and on and on and on and on. So, you know, I did give it a go, but at the end of it, it's a no from me.
Okay, Stephen.
Interesting one. Never been a fan. I mean, I like some loud music. I love AC/DC, I love Rush, all this stuff, but they're in a different box. They're a different thing. Metallica's they're too far out there into the thrash world for me, personally. I know they've sold like a zillion albums and what have you, but from a personal point of view, I don't think so. No, that's a pretty conclusive no, in my opinion. I can go into the reasons, but I'm not too extreme. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like people pushing the boundaries and what have you, and you know, I mean, the Pistols turned my head. You know, extreme music at the time, but this mob, they leave me cold. Not my thing at all. No, not at all.
Okay, mate.
John, he mentioned Rush there. Did you hear that?
I did. Yeah. I've putting that in the memory bank.
Right. So
yeah.
I just don't get this one in, Brian. I beat you.
That's for another day, John.
Take that later, shall we?
Absolutely. George, you want to square this one off then? What's your take?
Won't take long, guys. For me, Metallica, I never liked them to start with. And then I saw the movie, Some Kind of Monster, the documentary movie about them.
Yeah.
And that remarkable thing about, you know, when you see musicians in their natural habitat and you get to see them up and close in person, you tend to, a lot of the times you sort of warm to them. This was the rare occasion where it just confirmed my feelings of absolute fucking hatred towards Metallica. I think they are absolute, particularly Hetfield and Lars Ulrich. The two of them can go fuck themselves. Really, I cannot bear their indulgent shite. And I quite like rock, but this is like super indulgent noise. There's almost no redeeming features to the band and to this album. And the only thing I can say about them is I wish to God that I'd listened to Taylor Swift and Lucinda Williams after listening to this, and I may have appreciated them a wee bit more.
I'm sure they're both delighted to hear that. I'll take that as a no. My sort of Topmansworth would validate those comments. I quite like heavy rock. I'm not a particularly heavy rock fan. It's interesting. John touched on the genres there, and there's actually not that much rock in the 100. And in my head, being a sort of more of American-based list, I actually thought it was going to be pretty heavy with rock, but there's not a lot there. I picked up AC/DC are coming up, Guns N' Roses are coming up, Zepp are on there, and that's it really. Apart from Metallica.
My favorite Led Zepp was 101, so I'm a bit upset about that.
Well, you might have a chance to stick it in at some point, Lisa. Don't worry about that. But like the Sabbath aren't in the 100, so if you are looking at iconic metal, I guess you would
go Sabbath light years ahead of Metallica.
I would absolutely validate your comment about the documentary. I suppose I would encourage people to watch it if they haven't. Maybe just
it's incredible. It's an incredible movie, but
remind me what's the name again?
Some kind of monster. You walk away from it thinking, Jesus, those guys are utter arseholes.
It's particularly difficult to watch. On the basis it's a fly in the wall movie that James Hetfield disappears for a year, I think, George, is that right?
I can't remember, but
I'm off the grid for a year.
I would like to smash Lars Ulrich's head in. It was fucking, honestly, words can't describe my loathing of Metallica.
The two other comments I'd make before we move on, I think we've got a bit of a collective no here. It also reminded me of why I'm not a particularly big fan of Muse. And that I'd kind of forgotten that, if I'm being honest, and that reminded me I don't particularly like them, so that didn't help. I also found a crack.
Listen to Metallica before listening to Muse. That's how much I detest Muse.
Probably. I did find a brilliant version of Whiskey in the Jar, believe it or not. As I was kicking about on playlists.
By Metallica, Brian.
By Metallica, yeah.
Live at Slane Castle.
I've no idea, mate. I just it's
the only 5 minutes them I could tolerate ever in the rest of my life. They nail it.
A bit of pub metal, but no, actually, it was perfect. I suppose you can't beat a good song, can you? Yeah, but I would tend to go along with that. And I think if you believe in great music and stuff like that, and great rock music, there's definitely 2 or 3 records coming up that'll give us a chance maybe to kick the tires a bit on those for what they are, rather than it feels more like an image for Metallica. It's almost a thing, isn't it, rather than their actual music, which it's not for me. So unless there's any dissenters, I think we're unanimous that this one comes off the list. Is that correct? It's in the bin, dusty bin. Cool, excellent. One to go. Oh, sorry, I had a quick PS. My apologies. This will cheer you up. So I was out cleaning the leaves in the garden maybe a week, 10 days ago, right? And I had some speakers on, and I'm listening. I've got Metallica on, right? And I'm listening, but I'm finding it difficult. But there's one of the songs, I think it was Sanatorium, I think it was called. And as it's playing, it's quite slow, and there was this kind of like this kind of grinding, beeping noise in the background. Really, really weird sound, and it was kind of like a heartbeat thing. And although I wasn't particularly enjoying the music, I'm thinking that's quite interesting. I wonder how they've kind of brought that in or whatever. It wasn't on the record. It was the bin lorry. It was outside my garden, and it was reversing down and round into like the little lane to pick some stuff up, and it was making this kind of funny cranking noise on its lorry.
And it actually improved the sound of Metallica.
If I'm being honest with you, George, it did. So yeah.
Bin lorries are better than Metallica.
Yeah.
Well, that'll go on the Twitter quote, right?
Just on music documentaries, I'll just throw in another one, the story of Anvil.
Oh, that's great.
I saw that one.
Yeah, you need it is absolutely fantastic. So
that's
Anvil,
that's a
heavy rock
one.
is on the point of stardom. and it just never happens for them. And the guy,
Right.
I think he ends up, he drives a school bus, doesn't he, George? Is that right?
Yeah, they're both doing sort of menial
Yeah.
work.
Menial jobs, but
It's a
they've
lovely
still got,
story.
still
Okay.
think they can do it and hit the big time. It's fantastic. So polar
Brilliant.
opposite of Metallica.
We'll put that
Yeah.
on the list. And one of the great things of doing this happened when we did the last series, was we get so many suggestions and references for watching or listening to things that we didn't really know, to be honest. So so keep those coming, guys. And we can share those on Twitter as well. That's fantastic. So Metallica's a no. And that takes us to the last one. So the last one of our first five is number 96, which is REM, Automatic for the People, which was released in October 92. Okay, so the comments on that one from Rolling Stone was that, quote, "It doesn't sound a whole lot like us," warned guitarist Peter Buck, "but by stripping back their sound to a spare, largely acoustic essence, the College Rock Kings made the most powerful album of their career, an argument for sweetness and softness in an increasingly hard world. The bold sonic change-up laid bare Michael Stipe's keening baritone and expansive vocal melodies, accentuated in several songs by Led Zeppelin member John Paul Jones's gorgeous string arrangements. The album was beautiful. It was quiet," Stipe said. "It flew in the face of everything that was going down musically at the time. At a time when grunge angst ruled, songs like Everybody Hurts and the lovely Find the River offered solace." So what do we think about REM, Automatic for the People?
100% in my opinion. Love it. Deservedly, I actually think it should be slightly higher up the chart.
Okay.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful album. But I'll leave that there.
That's perfect. We'll take that. And who wants to take that one on?
Yeah, well,
Oh, John gone?
John.
Okay, let's keep going. Lisa?
Doesn't like it.
Yeah, I really like the album. I have to say I was probably more into REM when they were doing Green, and then of course there's a hugely popular Out of Time because the hits were on that. Oh, sorry, John, I've started talking.
yeah, no, it's fine. Crack on. It just seemed to, I lost the signal, so you crack on.
They were a lot more upbeat, rocky albums. This one's a lot more subtle and a lot more acoustic. Is it more acoustic? You know, that starts off as very acoustic. It's quite maudlin, actually. It's quite, I don't know, a lot of it's a bit loss and sadness, but then there's always hope at the end. You know, there's Everybody Hurts. I mean, it's heart-wrenching, isn't it? But then you've got the hope. I keep repeating myself here, don't I? But you know, there's a clear message there. Hold on, you know.
Well, they almost became MTV stars, didn't they, off the back of some of these videos, which was so unusual for REM at the time, because they came out of that sort of alt-indie world, and Everybody Hurts, for example, won all sorts of MTV awards and stuff for.
Well, the fact that it kind of starts off acoustic and then you know, builds up to this sort of orchestral finale where, you know, it leaves you feeling hopeful, I think.
Yeah, it does. Okay, cool. George?
I loved it. I really, really loved it. And like Stephen, I think it should be a lot higher up the charts. I think REM just hit that sweet spot in the late 80s, early 90s when they just seemed to, everything they released just seemed to nail that sort of post-pop, you know, post-punk, alt, Americana. They just seem to have everything going for them at the same time. And some of the songs, I don't even think they could have topped Automatic for the People. I think this was their absolute apogee. The songs on it, there's about 5 world-class songs on it, and they were all hits. Very, very rare you get that from a band. I thought this was them at their absolute pinnacle. And again, as I said, as Stephen said, it should be much higher up the charts.
Well, if we agree to that, then when we come to recategorise the 100, we will get the chance to re-rank the records that stay on the list. So maybe we can do that. John, what's your take, mate?
Yeah, loved it. I bought it at the time, played it to death. probably at a time, you know, everybody's away up the town going to acid house parties. I'm probably in my house listening to this melancholic, reflective album, completely at odds for the majority of people in Stirling at the time, perhaps. Completely different from Out of Time. It was followed to Out of Time, which was probably their commercial breakthrough album, Losing My Religion, Shiny Happy People, all that kind of stuff. But this was really taking it down, quite a lo-fi album, I felt, very reflective, really, really good songs on it. I'm not sure, would it be my top album, REM album? I'm not sure. That's maybe quite an interesting debate given some of the previous back catalogue up to that point, but it's definitely up there, and for me definitely goes into the top 100. And I agree with, you know, the comments that Stephen made. This should be far higher up.
Yeah, and REM might be one of those bands that when we get to nominate maybe other records to be considered, they might get a second or third proposal, I guess, for us to kick about, which will be quite interesting. I would concur with all of that. I'm not the hugest REM fan. I really like them, but I think this is a record. I have a general rule that for a great album, you should have at least half of the songs on the record should be great. And I think it's way past it on this one. There's maybe 7, maybe 8 of the songs.
Yeah, I mean, even things like, I mean, the video for Everybody Hurts, it's, you know, you can just picture it right away, can't you? You know, it's stuck in that traffic jam. It's really, really iconic. And
yeah,
can even, I think, you know, George said, I think it was about 5 or 6 singles for the album. And, you know, my favourite tracks are, you know, it's a non-single. It's the last track on it, Find the River. You know, it's just blows me away every time I listen to it. It's fantastic.
Absolutely fantastic. Didn't tour it at all. Didn't tour Out of Time either, which again was quite a brave thing to do at that point. But album's huge, sold 18 million. It was number 1 in 13, 14 countries. And probably, I guess, you know, was the start of them moving on to being something else again, because they probably couldn't get any better at, or bigger at doing this type of kind of music. I did pick up when I was listening to it, which I really enjoyed because I probably hadn't listened to it straight through for ages. But when they did a 25-year re-release, maybe, I don't know, 5 years ago, there's a live album that's sort of tagged on the back of it from the 40 Club, which is in Athens, which they did at the time, something to do with Greenpeace, I think, some sort of Greenpeace gig, which is in effect this album plus a few others kicking about. But if you get the chance to listen to it, it's absolutely iconic. They're at the top of their game.
Well, Brian, the live album?
It's on, it's on the re-release of Automatic for the People.
Right. Okay.
But at the end of that, there's a live album kind of tagged onto it. I'm sure if you buy the record, it's probably a separate disc to come with that. It's really good. The only other thing I picked up on, which I guess maybe is a nice way to finish, is that, believe it or not, REM were Cliff Burton's favourite band of the 80s from Metallica.
At least he's got some good taste, I suppose.
Well, obviously he was only with us till 86, so I don't know if he'd have changed his mind on that. But I agree. I think we'll obviously do a double check with everyone, but I think we're all saying very good, and if anything, probably deserves more recognition, would be the summary.
Absolutely.
I'm quite sad about that now that you've mentioned that about Chris Burton, because that I think I softened a bit to Metallica when I actually heard the story about what happened to him, and and you know, the Orion, the instrumental is like his swan song, you know.
Yeah.
Now you've told me that the REM were his favourite band, I'm feeling really bad now.
You're going to the bad fire, Lisa.
Well,
you know, I believed in all that.
Listen, any band that can be a jumping off point. When I was doing the Googling, and I know you'll know this, but it's just when you bring it all together. So the referencing and influencing I picked up on was Sonic Youth, Replacements, Nirvana, Radiohead, Pearl Jam, Pixies and Smiths. You know, and again, I don't love them all to death, but you know, it's a pretty strong canon of bands that have been heavily influential over the last 30, 40 years, and REM have got a connection to pretty much all of them, one way or another, and you've got to tip your hat to that for me. So I think we're more than happy, I think, to put those guys in, and fingers crossed we get the chance to either maybe have a chat about another one or maybe nudge them up the list a little bit.
I'm like John. It's possibly not my favourite REM album, but that's not really relevant. I think this should go in.
Well, it was a 94% pass from from the Twitter team as well. So yeah, this was the strongest validation we had for any of the 5 from Twitter, which
Who said no?
hopefully is a nice thing.
You
Pardon?
blocked and reported. Who said no? You blocked and reported them.
I didn't know.
It's probably James Hatfield. So that's us, guys. So we've got 5 there. So on balance, we had the band in, we had Taylor Swift out, we had Lucinda Williams out, we had Metallica out, we had REM in. So we're 2 out of 5 for our first 5, which in effect creates 3 gaps. So as we start to do a few more, what we'll ask you to do is start thinking about, you know, maybe I know 5, 10 records that we want to start maybe putting together, that we can start to have another debate about records that we want to supplement back onto the list. But we'll knock through a few more of the Rolling Stone stuff first, and then we'll see where we get to. So on the next,
there, Brian, sorry to interrupt. I think the problem there might come whereby we just go for what we want to be there as opposed to what should be there.
yeah, but we've got a sense check, haven't we? There's going to be 6 of us to sense check that. So a bit of Twitter chat as well. So I think I'm fairly confident we'll, at the very least, we'll fall out and fall back in again. So don't worry too much about that. I think the next 5 we're looking at, again, probably quite interesting. So the next 5 in the list are Drake, the Stooges, Missy Elliott, Jimi Hendrix, and Bruce Springsteen. So again, if you're looking at an eclectic 5-some, then
Interesting.
it's not a bad shout, that. So we're going to do this. Obviously, we'll give you all a bit of time to go back and re-listen to them all again, and hopefully by the time we get together again, we'll all have a fairly, you know, good opinion of what's out there, and we'll have some chats and votes. So, any more? Will we sign off for the first episode?
Yep.
Oh, good.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Cool. Well, thanks very much for that, and hope it's been reasonably enjoyable and quite informative. And we'll look forward to everyone getting together again for the second one soon. Okay, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Take
Good night,
care,
everybody.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.